Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're undertaking a really fascinating forensic investigation into a question that sits at the very heart of history. Basically, how do we actually verify historical claims? When a flashy headline tells you that a centuries-old document proves some shocking new fact, what's the actual mechanism for checking if that's true? Well, we're going to look at the strict, structured methodology historians use to separate a compelling story from verifiable evidence. Let's dive right in. I want to pose this question directly to you. How do we know a historical document says what people actually claim it says? In our modern era of rapid-fire news summaries and sensationalized history, it is incredibly easy to just take a media report at face value. But reading a modern summary of a historical event is miles away from looking at the raw, unfiltered evidence. So how do we bridge that gap? Section 1. The verification problem beyond the headline. You see, historical sources are almost always mediated. Every witness, every archive, and every editor carries their own specific lens. When you read a history book, you aren't really reading history directly. You're reading someone's interpretation of a transcription of a document that just happened to survive the centuries. We have to look past the headline and realize that just because a document is archivally anchored, which just means we know exactly what physical building and shelf it sits on, that does not mean it's publicly image verified. Knowing a document physically exists in a library is a fantastic start, but it's an entirely different thing for you or me to actually be able to look at the contents of its pages with our own eyes. Section 2. The Historical Evidence Ladder. To make sense of this, historians rely on a structured methodology. Think of it like a ladder. Step 1 is archival existence. Does the document live in a real repository? Step 2 is catalog precision. Can we pinpoint its exact folder rather than just pointing to a massive general collection? Step 3 is transcription. Has a professional carefully typed out that old handwriting into modern text? Step 4 is the manuscript image. Do we have high-resolution photos of the original pages? And finally, Step 5, the very top of the ladder, independent comparison. This is where the public can lay a photograph of the original manuscript right next to the transcription and verify word for word that they match. Surprisingly, for many famous historical events, we are completely missing this final step. Section 3. Case Study, the Bobadilla Inquiry. To see how this ladder works in the real world, we're going to look at the documents detailing Christopher Columbus's arrest and removal from power in Hispaniola. It's a major historical event that actually resulted in Columbus being sent back to Spain in chains. Applying our ladder, let's look at steps 1 and 2, archival existence and catalog precision. This inquiry is absolutely real and it's archivally anchored. It's located at the Archivo General de Simancas in Spain in a specific section called Incorporated Juros, specifically inside a bundle, or legajo, number 13. This gives us immense confidence that this isn't some imaginary source. It has a real physical address in a highly respected archive. Climbing further up the ladder, we hit step 3, transcription. Back in 2006, scholars Consuela Varela and paleographer Isabel Aguirre published a full transcription of this inquiry in a book titled La Caída de Cristóbal Colón. This is a major scholarly achievement. They took the difficult, centuries-old handwriting from that specific archive shelf and painstakingly published it as readable text. It's a massive step forward for historical accessibility. Section 4. Transcriptions versus manuscripts. But here we hit a fascinating crossroads, the crucial gap between a professionally published book and the actual, raw, physical manuscript. So why isn't a published transcription the end of the story? Well, a published transcription relies heavily on editorial choices. A paleographer has to make decisions about how to expand centuries-old abbreviations, how to add modern punctuation, and how to guess what a word says when the original ink is faded, smudged, or just damaged by time. The manuscript images, on the other hand, represent the raw physical reality. Without them, the public is forced to completely trust the transcriber's choices without any way to independently verify them. Let's break down exactly where we stand with the Bobadilla inquiry right now. What is verified? Well, the published scholarly edition is verified to exist. The physical archive location at Simancas is verified. But look closely at the unverified column. Currently, if you go to the Spanish Archives online database, which is known as PARES, you can only find a broad series-level record, not a specific item-level record for this document. And most importantly, there is currently no publicly available complete set of digital manuscript images for this inquiry. We are effectively stuck at step 3 on our ladder. Section 5. Weighing hostile testimony. Now, let's just imagine we did have those perfect high-resolution manuscript images. Would our job be done? Not quite. Even when we have perfect visual verification of a document, historians still have to abide by strict rules of evidence. We can't just treat an academic claim as absolute proof. We have to clearly separate archival citation from scholarly interpretation. And critically, when we're dealing with a judicial file like the Bobadilla inquiry, we cannot treat hostile testimony as a legal conviction. Just because someone said something in a courtroom over 500 years ago and a scribe wrote it down doesn't magically transform that statement into an objective, established historical fact. So, the absolutely crucial point is this. We have to mentally label these documents with a massive caution sign that reads, allegation. The Bobadilla inquiry records what Columbus's political enemies and subjects claimed under questioning in a highly charged, highly hostile environment. Historians must take those transcribed, recorded allegations and independently corroborate them with entirely separate primary sources before treating them as historical truths. Verification is about proving the document says what we think it says. Corroboration is about proving the events actually happened. Section 6. Why public access matters. You might be wondering, why should anyone outside of a university history department care about digital images of an old Spanish manuscript? It matters because history belongs to everyone, and transparency is literally the only way to build trust. To completely close the verification gap for the Bobadilla inquiry, we need these specific materials from the Archivo General de Simancas. We need a full specific catalog record. We need to know exactly how many pages or folios make up this file. We need digital images of every single page, front and back. We need to know the exact editorial rules the transcribers used, because only then can we achieve independent public comparison. I want to pause here and make something incredibly clear. Pointing out this verification gap is absolutely not an accusation of fraud. No one is saying the archive is lying or that the scholars who transcribed the document acted in bad faith. Acknowledging a verification gap is simply the standard, rigorous discipline of history. It's a responsible, perfectly neutral request for public access so that independent researchers can just double-check the work. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought. The Bobadilla inquiry is incredibly important. It's professionally edited and firmly anchored in a real archive. But without public manuscript images, our verification is incomplete. So, armed with this evidence ladder, how will you evaluate the next sensational historical headline you read? Will you just accept the transcription as the final word, or will you ask to see the original ink? Keep asking questions, keep demanding those primary sources, and never stop climbing that ladder. Thanks so much for exploring with me today.